spent decades watching ordinary people ruin their financial lives not by spending too much, but by waiting too long. Most people believe you need a high salary to build real wealth. They are wrong. The real game is not how much money comes in. The real game is what you do with what you already have. During my years studying the habits of people who quietly built wealth on average incomes, I learned that the gap between a person who saves nothing and a person who builds $100,000 is almost never income. It is almost always behavior. Stay with me. By the end of this, you will know 3 specific steps you can take this week, not next year, not when you get a raise, but this week, that can move you from zero to $100,000 faster than you ever thought possible. Let me tell you about a man I once studied. His name for this story is David. David worked for 22 years at the same company. He earned a solid income. Not rich, but comfortable. He drove a good car, lived in a good neighborhood, took a vacation every summer. And at age 52, when he sat down to look at what he had saved, the number was just under $8,000. Not 8,000 a year, 8,000 total. In 22 years of working, David had accumulated less money than most people spend on a used car. He was not lazy. He was not stupid. He had simply spent 22 years doing what most people around him were doing, spending up to the edge of his income and occasionally a little beyond it. The painful truth about David is that he had the tools to be wealthy. He had a salary. He had benefits. He had time. What he did not have was a working model of how money actually builds. He thought wealth was something that happened to people who earned more than he did. He thought that his income was the problem. So every raise he got, he spent. Every bonus he spent. Every tax return he spent. And the math that could have made him secure by 50 instead left him terrified at 52. Here is the number that matters most in David's story. Not his salary, not his expenses. The number that matters is zero. Because for 22 years, the amount David set aside for his future before he paid anyone else was zero. Not close to zero. Exactly zero. And when you put in zero, the result is always zero. No matter how many years you give it. That is what the wrong mental model costs. Not a bad month, not a rough year, 2 decades of nothing. The new model that replaces David's thinking is this. Wealth is not built by people who earn the most. Wealth is built by people who keep the most of what they earn. That sentence sounds simple. It is simple. But simple is not the same as easy, and most people never do it. The entire framework we are about to walk through is built on that one idea. Keep more than you spend. Put the difference somewhere it can grow. Repeat. That is it. Everything else is just detail. Now, the investor whose thinking shaped my own understanding of this, a man I spent years studying, whose approach to money was so calm and so patient that most people thought he was boring, he said something I never forgot. He said that the most important thing an ordinary person can do with money is to make sure money is always working, even when they are not. Not sometimes. Not when the market is good. Always. And the way you make that happen is not complicated. You build a system. You remove the choice from the equation, and you let time do what time does best. The framework I am about to give you has 3 parts, 3 steps, 3 simple behaviors that, combined over time, can take someone from zero to $100,000. Not in a week, not in a year if you start from nothing, but realistically, in 5 to 7 years for most people and faster for others. None of these steps requires a promotion. None of them requires a side business, a hot stock tip, or any financial knowledge beyond what a 12-year-old could understand. They require only this, that you start and that you do not stop. The first step is this: pay yourself before you pay anyone else, before the rent, before the groceries, before the phone bill, before any of it. The moment money enters your account, 10% of it belongs to your future, not 9%, not what is left over at the end of the month. 10% off the top on day one. Now I can already hear the objection forming in your mind. You are about to tell me you cannot afford 10%. I want to be careful here because I take that concern seriously. But I want to show you something first. Consider two people. Sarah starts at age 28 and sets aside $200 every single month into an index fund that grows at 7% per year on average. She does this for 20 years and then stops completely. Never adds another dollar. Michael waits until age 38 to start, but he puts in $400 per month, twice as much as Sarah, for the next 20 years. Same 7% return. Same discipline. Same index foo. ND. When both of them reach age 58, Sarah has approximately $104,000. Michael has approximately $104,000 too, but he put in twice as much money per month to get there. Sarah built the same number by starting 10 years earlier with half the effort. That is not a trick. That is arithmetic. Time is the ingredient that most people waste because they keep waiting for the right moment to start. Now let me kill the second objection because it always comes next. You are going to say that you do not have $200 a month to spare. I understand that. Start with 50. Start with 25. Start with whatever is true right now. The number matters less than the habit. The reason I say 10% is because for most people, 10% is uncomfortable but survivable. It forces the adjustment. When you start at 1% and plan to grow it, most people never grow it. They find a reason not to. So start as close to 10% as you possibly can. Automate it so it moves before you can spend it, and leave it alone. The objection I hear least often is the most important one. People say, even if I save 10%, what do I do with it? And this brings us to the second part of the first step, which is where the money goes. Do not leave it sitting in a checking account. Do not let it pile up in savings earning almost nothing. Put it into a broad index fund, one that owns a piece of hundreds or thousands of companies at once. Spread it out. Not because it is exciting, but because over any 20-year period in modern history, the broad stock market has grown. Not every year, not without drops, but over time, consistently and powerfully. You do not need to pick stocks. You do not need to understand earnings reports. You need to buy a piece of everything and hold it until you need it. So the first concrete thing you do this week is this. Open an investment account if you do not have one. Set up an automatic transfer for the day after your paycheck lands. Pick a dollar amount between 25 and whatever 10% of your take-home pay is. Set the transfer to go into a broad market index fund. And then, and this is the most important part, do not look at it. Not every day, not every week, quarterly at most. Because the biggest mistake people make with investments is reacting to what they see on a given Tuesday. They panic when it drops. They get greedy when it climbs. Neither of those reactions helps them. What helps them is the same thing that helped Sarah, showing up every month for a long time. The second step is this. Close the gap between what you earn and what you spend, but do not do it by suffering. Most advice about money tells you to cut things. Stop buying coffee. Stop eating at restaurants. Stop enjoying your life. That advice fails almost every time because it treats money like a discipline problem when it is actually a design problem. You do not need more willpower. You need a better system. And the best system for closing the spending gap is not restriction. It is awareness. Here is what I mean. Most people who feel like they do not have enough money have never actually tracked where their money goes for 30 days straight. Not an estimate, not a guess. Actual numbers every purchase for one full month. I have watched people do this exercise and discover, with genuine shock, that they are spending $400 a month on things they cannot name. Subscriptions running in the background. Impulse purchases. Convenience spending that felt tiny in the moment but compounded into something enormous. When they see the number, they do not need to be told what to cut. They cut it themselves immediately because the number embarrasses them. Let me give you a contrast that makes this concrete. Think about a woman I once studied. Her name for this story is Rosa. Rosa made $48,000 a year. She felt broke. She decided to track every purchase for 30 days, not to budget, just to watch. At the end of 30 days, she found $340 in monthly subscriptions she had forgotten about or stopped using. She found $280 in food spending she could cut in half without feeling restricted, just by cooking 3 more meals a week at home. She found $90 in fees she was paying for services that had free alternatives. Total recoverable money found in 30 days of watching. $710 per month. Not from a raise, not from a second job, from attention. That $710, redirected at 7% for 10 years, becomes approximately $122,000. Now compare Rosa to her neighbor, James. James earned $72,000 a year, 50% more than Rosa, but James never tracked anything. He felt fine month to month and assumed things were working. By age 45, James had about $11,000 in savings. Rosa, who earned less, had built more. The gap was not income. The gap was awareness. Money does not care how much you earn. It only cares what you do with what you have. The objection I hear to tracking is that it feels like punishment. It fee. LS like being put on a diet. And I understand that feeling. So I want to reframe it. Tracking is not restriction. Tracking is just information. You are not cutting anything on day one. You are just watching. You are learning the truth about where your life energy, because that is what money is, your traded life energy, actually goes. Once you see it clearly, the choices make themselves. Nobody who tracks spending for 30 days and finds $400 going to things they do not value looks at that number and says, yes, that is exactly what I want my life to look like. So step 2 this week is this. Download a simple expense tracking app or open a spreadsheet or carry a small notebook, whatever fits your life. For 30 days, write down everything, every coffee, every tank of gas, every online order, every subscription charge. Do not judge it yet. Just watch. At the end of 30 days, circle everything that cost you money but did not make your life meaningfully better. That circled number is your first number. That is your gap. That is the dollar amount sitting between where you are and where you could be. The third step is the one most people skip entirely, and it is the one that separates the people who build 100,000 from the people who stay stuck. The third step is this. Never let a raise make you richer in lifestyle before it makes you richer in savings. This is called lifestyle inflation, and it is the silent killer of every financial plan that ever almost worked. Here is how it happens. You get a raise of $500 a month. You feel it. Your brain feels it. And your brain immediately starts making calculations about what you can afford now that you could not afford before. A nicer apartment, a newer car, better restaurants, a few more subscriptions, and the raise disappears into the new normal within 90 days. 3 months later, you feel exactly as tight as you did before, because you are. Think about a couple I once studied. Both worked. Combined income of $90,000 a year. Over 5 years, they received raises totaling about $22,000 more per year. At the end of those 5 years, they had saved exactly $3,400. The raises had all been absorbed. Their lifestyle had grown to fill every dollar of new income, exactly as it had filled every dollar of old income. They worked harder, earned more, and had nothing to show for it. They were not bad people. They were not irresponsible people. They had simply never made a rule about what to do with new money before the new money arrived. Now contrast that couple with someone I will call Marcus. Marcus made $55,000 a year. Every time he got a raise, he had a standing rule. Half of every raise went into his investment account automatically the same week the raise took effect. The other half he could spend however he wanted. Over 8 years, his income grew from 55,000 to 74,000. But because he captured half of every raise before he could spend it, his savings rate climbed from 10% to nearly 19%, without him ever feeling like he was restricting himself. Because he was only keeping half the raise, it still felt like a raise. He still got to enjoy it, but the other half was building. At year 8, Marcus crossed 100,000 for the first time. He had never earned more than 74,000 in a year, and he had done it in a city with a cost of living that most people would call challenging. The objection to this step is always some version of, I deserve to enjoy my raise. And I agree with you, completely. You worked for it. You earned it. You should enjoy it. And this rule lets you enjoy exactly half of it immediately. What it prevents is the entire raise evaporating into higher fixed costs, a lease, a loan payment, a recurring subscription that now require every dollar of the raise just to maintain. When you put half into savings first and then spend the rest, you enjoy the raise and you build the wealth. You do not have to choose. So step 3 this week is this. Write down your current income. Write down the percentage of it you are saving right now. And write down this rule. The next time your income goes up by any amount, 50% of the increase goes directly into savings, automatically, before you adjust any spending. Do it now as a written rule so it exists before the next raise arrives. Because in the moment the raise arrives, your brain will have 17 very convincing reasons why this particular raise should be an exception. Do not let your brain have that conversation. Have the rule already made. Now I want to talk about the part of this that no one talks about, the part where it breaks. Because every person who has tried to save money has had a moment, sometimes many moments, where the plan collapsed. Not because the math was wrong, not because the strategy was bad, but because of a feeling. The feeling usually arrives somewhere between month 3 and month 6. You have been doing everything right. You have automated the savings. You have tracked the spending. You have kept the lifestyle from inflating. And then something happens. A car repair, a medical bill, a rough month at work, or nothing happens at all and you are just tired of being careful. And in that moment, the easy path is to stop, to tell yourself you deserve a break, to pause the automatic transfer just this once, to let the tracking slide for a few weeks. And then a few weeks become a month, and a month becomes 3 months. And suddenly you are back at the beginning wondering what happened. The structural fix for this moment is not motivation. Motivation is what you feel on January 1st when you are full of optimism and the year is new. Motivation is not reliable. The structural fix is automation and a buffer. The automation we have already talked about. The savings transfer happens before you can make a decision about it. The buffer is something different. The buffer is a small emergency fund, ideally between $1,000 and $3,000, that you build in the first 90 days before you do anything else. This account exists for one purpose only, to absorb the unexpected things that will otherwise derail your savings plan. A car repair hits your buffer, not your investment account. A medical bill hits your buffer, not your investment account. The buffer is not an investment. It earns almost nothing, but its job is not to grow. Its job is to make sure the plan survives contact with real life. The emotional moment when people break is almost always preceded by a feeling of restriction. The feeling that they have been good for so long and they deserve to let themselves off the hook. I want to name this feeling because naming it is the first part of surviving it. When it arrives, and it will arrive, the right question is not whether you deserve a break. The right question is, what does a break actually cost me? If you pause the automatic transfer for 3 months while you are in the phase where money that makes money is doing its work, you are not just losing 3 months of contributions. You are losing the 3 months of growth that those contributions would have started. You are losing the growth on that growth over the remaining years of the plan. A one-time $600 pause at the right compounding moment can cost you thousands of dollars over a decade. That is the real cost. Once you see that number clearly, the break does not feel as restful. The other trap, and this is the one that catches smart people, is optimization paralysis. This is when someone reads enough about investing to become confused. They learn about index funds, and then they read about sector funds, and then they hear about real estate, and then they consider starting a small business, and then they read about bond allocation, and before long they have learned so much that they cannot make a single decision. And while they are optimizing, they are not doing. Every month they spend researching the perfect strategy is a month where the imperfect strategy would already be working. The perfect investment plan is the one you actually execute. A simple index fund, funded consistently, beats any sophisticated strategy you read about but never start. Here is what all of this adds up to. $100,000 is not a mystery. It is arithmetic. It is the result of putting in consistent amounts, letting them grow, keeping your lifestyle from chasing your income and not stopping. That is the whole formula. It does not require genius. It does not require luck. It does not even require a high income, as Rosa showed us, and as Marcus showed us, and as the arithmetic shows us every time we run the numbers honestly. What it requires is a decision, made once, reinforced by a system, protected by a buffer, and left alone long enough for time to do its work. But here is the thing I want you to understand most. This is not really about the $100,000. The number is the proof that the behavior worked. The actual prize is something harder to measure. It is the feeling of not being afraid, the feeling of knowing that if something goes wrong, you have something, the feeling of being able to make a choice, a job choice, a relationship choice, a life choice, from a position of some security instead of desperation. Most people make the most important decisions of their lives from a position of financial fear. Where they live, who they work for, whether to leave a bad situation, all of it colored by the fact that they have nothing to fall back on. The $100,000 does not buy things, it buys options, and options are the closest thing to freedom that ordinary life offers. Every person who built this quietly, without a high salary, without a windfall, without a lucky break, did it by caring for their future self as much as they cared about their present one. They did not treat savings as punishment. They treated it as respect for the person they were going to be. That shift in thinking, Rom saving as restriction to saving as care is small, but it changes everything. Because you will keep doing things you believe are good for you. You will not keep doing things that feel like punishment. Take the 3 steps. Automate 10% before anything else lands. Track your spending for 30 days without judgment. Write the rule for your next raise before it arrives. None of this is complicated. All of it works. And the person who does all 3, starting this week, looks back in 7 years at a number that proves it. You gave the next hour of your life to this. That matters. The next video in this series is about what to do once you reach the first $100,000. Because that milestone is not the end of the journey. It is the point where the rules change and the decisions get more interesting. What you do between 100,000 and 500,000 is different, and most people get it wrong by continuing to do exactly what got them to 100. Hit subscribe because this work is not content. It is a discipline, and a discipline does not survive in isolation. The work is just beginning.